The alien girl walked slowly through the broken streets of her colony. Her head was down, and her eyes were heavy with sadness. Every step she took made her feel smaller, as if the world itself wanted her to disappear. Around her, whispers followed. Cruel voices rising like knives cutting through her heart. "She is worthless," one alien hissed from a corner. "She cannot fight. She cannot work. She's a burden to all of us," another added. The words wrapped around her like chains, pulling her deeper into despair. Her thin hands trembled as she tried to ignore them, but their laughter was loud. Cruel and sharp, children of her own kind pointed at her, mocking with wide smiles. "Look at her, the weak one, the broken one," they shouted. Their parents did not stop them. Instead, they nodded with cold agreement. The girl's chest ached, as if her heart had no strength left to beat. She wanted to scream, to tell them she was alive, that she mattered. But every time she tried, her voice broke into silence. No one listened, no one cared. In their eyes, she was nothing but a shadow that could be erased. The colony itself was harsh, filled with ruins, dust, and broken machines. Resources were few, survival was difficult, the strong were praised, and the weak were pushed aside, and she, fragile and quiet, was always the target of their anger. Once she had dreams, dreams of being accepted, dreams of being loved. But those dreams had been crushed long ago under the weight of scorn. Now, all she carried was pain. Her shoulders bent not only from hunger, but from the cruel weight of shame. A group of older aliens blocked her path as she tried to pass. Their eyes burned with cold fire. "Where do you think you're going, worthless?" One sneered. She froze, her lips trembling, her heart racing like a trapped bird. They circled around her, pushing her back with rough hands. Her breath came short, fear tightening her chest. "Why don't you just leave this place?" Another spat. "You are nothing. You don't deserve even the scraps of food we share." Their voices rose in mocking laughter. The sound echoed in the ruined streets, louder than the wind. Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them away. She had learned long ago that tears only gave them more reasons to laugh. Inside her, a voice whispered, soft and broken, "Maybe they are right. Maybe I am nothing." Her knees felt weak, her spirit trembling. She wanted to vanish, to fade into the dust where no one would see her pain. But then, something unusual happened. Among the echoes of cruel laughter, she felt another presence. Footsteps, steady and strong, approached from behind. The mocking voices suddenly grew quieter, replaced by uneasy silence. The girl lifted her head slightly, her vision blurred by tears. In the distance, a figure walked closer, not one of her kind, but something different. A human, tall and firm, eyes watching the scene with quiet intensity. The aliens who mocked her stepped back a little. Their laughter stopped, though smirks still lingered. They whispered to each other, their faces uneasy. Humans were rare here. And this one looked different, fearless. The girl's breath caught in her throat. Her mind raced with confusion, fear, and a strange spark of hope. Why was he here? Why was he watching her? Did he see her shame, or did he see something more? The silence grew heavier, pressing down on everyone in the ruined street. The girl's heart pounded, faster and louder. For the first time she felt that something was about to change. Something was about to break the endless chain of cruelty. The human's eyes met hers, and in that single moment, she felt a flicker of warmth she had never known. It was not pity, it was not mockery, it was something else, something dangerous, something alive. The other aliens shifted nervously, waiting for his words. The girl stood frozen, caught between fear and fragile hope. The ruined streets were silent now, every eye on the stranger. And deep inside her heart, she knew this was not the end, but the beginning. The human stood tall in the middle of the ruined street. His clothes were dusty from travel, his boots heavy with dirt, but his presence was strong. The girl looked at him with wide, uncertain eyes, unsure if he was danger or safety. Her heart beat wildly, caught between fear and hope. The other aliens shifted nervously, whispering to each other. "Why is a human here?" one muttered. "They don't belong in this colony," another hissed. But none of them dared to mock him the way they mocked her. The human's gaze swept over the group. Calm but sharp, he did not speak at first. Only watching, his silence louder than their cruel words. Finally, he stepped closer, his eyes still locked on the girl. The crowd moved aside. Uneasy under his quiet strength. "You shouldn't treat her like this." His voice was steady, low but firm. The words were simple, but they cut through the silence like fire through dry grass. The aliens laughed weakly, trying to hide their unease. "She is worthless," one sneered. "Why would a human care?" The human didn't answer their mockery. Instead, he turned to the girl. His eyes softer now. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his tone almost gentle. The girl's lips parted, but no words came. Only a small shake of her head. It had been so long since anyone had asked her a question with kindness. Her chest ached with the strange warmth of it. She lowered her eyes, afraid to believe in it. Maybe it was a trick. Maybe he was no different from the rest. The human crouched down so his eyes were level with hers. "I'm not here to harm you," he said quietly. "I only want to help." His words carried a calm strength that made her heart tremble. The other aliens grumbled angrily. "Leave her," one snapped. "She is nothing but trouble." "You will regret wasting your time," another warned. But the human ignored them. As if their words were only dust in the wind, he reached into his pack and pulled out a small container. Inside was food, real food, warm and fragrant. The girl's eyes widened, hunger twisting deep in her stomach. She hesitated, not daring to move. "Take it," he said, his voice patient. Her fingers trembled as she slowly accepted the container. The first bite brought tears to her eyes. The taste almost unreal after days of scraps. She ate slowly, as if afraid it might vanish. The human watched her quietly, his expression unreadable. But in his gaze, there was no mockery, no disgust. Only something she did not recognize: respect. It was a feeling she had never been given before. The other aliens finally scattered, muttering darkly. They did not want trouble with a human. Their cruel laughter faded into the distance. For the first time in years, the girl stood without the weight of their voices pressing on her. Silence settled around them, broken only by the crackle of wind through the ruins. The girl looked at him again, her voice trembling like a fragile thread. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why are you helping me?" Her question carried fear, doubt, and a flicker of fragile hope. The human did not answer right away. He looked at the broken walls, the ruined machines, the shadows of the colony. Then he turned back to her, his eyes steady. "Because no one deserves to be treated as nothing," he said simply. Her heart twisted at those words. They were strange, almost impossible to believe, but deep inside, something fragile stirred a spark. It felt like a forgotten ember, glowing faintly in the ashes of her soul. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but her voice failed. Instead, she lowered her eyes again, hiding the tears that threatened to fall. The human stood slowly, adjusting the strap of his pack. "I'll be nearby if you need me," he said, before turning to leave. The girl watched him walk away, his figure strong against the fading light. Her hands clutched the food container tightly, as if it were treasure. Her heart was confused, afraid, yet strangely alive. No one had ever spoken to her that way before. That night, she lay awake in her small corner of the ruins. The memory of his words echoed again and again. "No one deserves to be treated as nothing." She repeated them in her heart until sleep finally took her. But even as she drifted into restless dreams, a shadow of doubt remained. Could she really trust him? Would he truly be different from the others? Or would his kindness vanish with the morning light? The ruins were silent, the stars cold above. But somewhere in the darkness, she felt the faintest warmth of something new, something dangerous, something alive, and though she did not know it yet, her life had just begun to change forever. ****. The morning light crept slowly across the ruined colony. The girl sat on a broken stone wall, holding the empty food container close to her chest. Her stomach was no longer empty, but her heart still felt heavy. The human's words from the day before echoed in her mind again and again. No one deserves to be treated as nothing. Those words had stirred something inside her, something she had buried long ago. But along with that warmth came fear, a fear of hope. Because hope had always betrayed her in the past. She thought of her life before, when she had been younger. Even as a child, she had been called weak. She remembered the cold eyes of her parents, the sharp laughter of her neighbors. Every day had been a lesson in rejection. She once dreamed of proving herself, of showing them all she was not useless. But every attempt ended in failure. Her hands were not strong enough, her body too fragile, her voice too soft. Each failure had been met with harsher scorn, until she stopped trying. Now she sat in silence, her soul cracked and bruised. She wanted to believe the human's kindness, but her heart whispered otherwise. What if he leaves? What if he changes? What if he mocks me too? Her doubts circled her mind like vultures waiting for her to fall. Her gaze lifted when she heard steady footsteps again. It was him, the human, carrying something in his hand. She stiffened, her heart racing. Torn between fear and strange anticipation, he stopped in front of her, offering a small flask of water. "You should drink," he said simply. She hesitated, her fingers trembling as she accepted it. The water was clean and cool, so unlike the bitter scraps she usually found. She whispered a quiet thank you, her voice barely audible. The human sat on a stone nearby, his eyes watching the ruins around them. He did not press her to speak, did not force her to explain. His silence was different. It was patient, and for the first time in her life, silence felt safe, not cruel. After a long pause, he finally asked, "What is your name?" Her throat tightened. The question felt heavy. She had almost forgotten the sound of her own name. Slowly, she whispered it, fragile and uncertain. The human repeated her name softly, and the sound was gentle, not sharp, not mocking, but warm. Her chest tightened. Tears burned at the edge of her eyes. Why did such a simple thing make her feel alive again? She wanted to tell him everything, her pain, her loneliness, her broken dreams. But the words caught in her throat like thorns. Instead, she lowered her eyes and whispered, "They hate me." The words slipped out before she could stop them. The human did not laugh, did not dismiss her. He only nodded slowly, his eyes serious. "They are wrong," he said quietly. "Their cruelty does not define you." The strength in his voice shook her more than any insult ever had. She turned away, hugging her knees close to her chest. Her tears finally spilled, falling silently into the dust. The human did not reach to touch her or force her to stop. He simply sat there, letting her cry, letting her break without shame. Hours passed as the colony went about its day. Some alien stared from afar, whispering cruelly at the sight of them together. But the girl no longer heard their words as loudly, because beside her sat someone who did not see her as worthless. Still, inside, the broken pieces of her soul trembled. She wanted to believe, but fear still held her tight. Her mind whispered, what if he leaves tomorrow? What if this kindness fades? She had been abandoned too many times to trust so easily. As the sun began to set, the human finally stood. "I'll return tomorrow," he said firmly. His tone carried no hesitation, no uncertainty. The words were a promise, and promises were things she had long forgotten. She nodded slowly, clutching the flask in her hands. Her heart beat faster as she watched him walk away. Part of her longed to call out, to stop him, but fear of her own weakness kept her silent. That night, she sat alone under the stars. The whispers of the colony still lingered in the air. Worthless, weak, broken. But another voice echoed louder, stronger. "No one deserves to be treated as nothing," she repeated it to herself again and again. Her heart, though fragile, carried the faintest spark of courage. A spark that had been dead for years, now flickering back to life. Yet as she closed her eyes, shadows crept at the edge of her thoughts. Somewhere in the darkness she sensed eyes watching. One of her kind had seen her with the human and was not pleased, and though she did not know it yet, the whispers of kindness would soon turn into threats. The next day came with heavy clouds hanging low over the colony. The girl sat quietly near the broken wall where she had first met the human. Her hands clutched the small flask he had given her, as if it was the only proof that kindness was real. Her eyes scanned the ruins, waiting, hoping, afraid. Soon the steady sound of boots came again. The human appeared, carrying a small bag, his figure strong against the gray sky. When he reached her, he offered a faint smile. "I told you I would return," he said, and her heart stirred with a strange warmth. But the warmth was short-lived. From the shadows, eyes followed them, cold and filled with anger. Whispers spread quickly through the colony like fire across dry grass. "She sits with the human again," one voice muttered. "She betrays her own kind," another spat. The mocking that once had been private now turned into something more dangerous. It was no longer only laughter, it was hatred, and hatred was far more deadly. The human sat with her, sharing food and quiet words, but even he could feel the tension in the air. His eyes scanned the ruins, alert, his body ready for trouble. He had seen enough of the world to know when danger was close. The girl lowered her eyes, guilt twisting inside her. "They will hate me more because of this," she whispered, her voice cracked with fear. "Maybe you should not come back." The human shook his head slowly, his gaze firm. "I don't care about their hatred," he said. "No one has the right to treat you like nothing." His words carried strength, but they also carried a challenge to the whole colony. That night, the whispers turned into shouts. Groups gathered in the ruined streets, their faces twisted with anger. "She is worthless. But now she brings danger upon us all," one growled. "If she chooses the human over her own kind, she's no longer one of us." The girl heard their words, her chest tight with terror. She curled up in the corner of her shelter, tears burning. Her eyes, the human had given her hope, but that hope now painted a target on her back. She wondered if kindness was worth this price. When morning came, the human arrived again. This time the streets were not silent. A group of older aliens blocked his path, their eyes sharp and filled with hostility. "You don't belong here, human," their leader hissed. The human stood tall, his face calm but unyielding. "I walk where I choose," he said, his voice steady. The leader stepped closer, his words dripping with venom. "Leave her or you will face more than words." The girl's heart raced as she watched from the shadows. Fear battled with something new inside her: desperation. She wanted to scream for him to leave, to protect himself. But at the same time, she wanted him to stay, to not abandon her like everyone else. The human did not move, did not flinch. He simply said, "If you want to fight, then fight me. But I will not leave her." His voice carried like thunder through the ruins. The crowd murmured, uneasy at his defiance. The leader sneered, but he did not strike. Instead, he leaned close, his words sharp as knives. "You cannot protect her forever," he whispered. "One day, she will break, and you will regret wasting your strength." With that, the group turned and vanished into the shadows, but their words lingered like poison in the air. The human exhaled slowly, his eyes still burning with resolve. He turned to the girl, who trembled where she stood. "They will not stop," she whispered, her voice shaking. "They will hurt me, maybe even hurt you." Her fear was real, heavy, suffocating. But the human placed a hand over his heart, his gaze unshaken. "Then let them try," he said. "As long as I breathe, you are not alone." The girl's tears fell silently, her soul torn between fear and the fragile light of hope she had never seen anyone stand for her before, not once. That night, the colony was alive with plotting. Her enemies gathered in secret corners, whispering cruel plans. If mockery would not break her, they would use fear, and if fear would not work, they would use violence. The girl lay awake, her heart heavy with dread. She clutched the flask in the memory of the human's words. No. One deserves to be treated as nothing. But doubt crawled into her soul like cold shadows. Was he strong enough to protect her from them all? And more importantly, was she strong enough to protect herself? The rising threat loomed like a storm. At the edge of the horizon, and though she did not know it yet, the storm was coming straight for her. Asterisk, asterisk. The colony was restless, whispers crawling like snakes through the ruined streets. The girl felt the weight of 1,000 eyes on her wherever she walked. Her people no longer only mocked her, they now saw her as a traitor. And every cruel word cut deeper, because she knew it was her bond with the human that fueled their hate. Still, each day the human returned. He brought her food, water, and above all, words that gave her fragile hope. He never asked for anything. In return, never judged her weakness, and slowly, she began to believe that maybe she was not worthless after all. One evening, as the sun dipped low, the human sat across from her on the broken wall. His eyes were calm but filled with determination. "You can't live in fear forever," he said. "If they call you weak, prove them wrong." She lowered her eyes, shame burning in her chest. "How?" she whispered. "I can't fight them. I can't even fight myself." Her voice cracked under the weight of years of rejection. But the human leaned forward, his voice steady and strong. "Strength isn't only about fists," he told her. "It's about standing when they want you to fall. It's about refusing to give them control." His words sank deep, stirring something hidden within her broken soul. For the first time she wanted to try, even if she failed. Over the days that followed, he began to teach her. He showed her how to move silently, how to keep balance, how to block instead of crumble. Her arms ached, her legs trembled, but he never let her give up, and when she fell, he only said, "Stand again." At first she felt foolish, clumsy, as if every step proved the colony right. But slowly, her body began to obey, her hands steadied. Her steps grew firmer, and in her chest, a new rhythm beat, not of fear but of determination. Yet the colony watched with hateful eyes. Their whispers grew sharper, their anger stronger. "She thinks she is strong now because of him," they hissed. "She has forgotten what she really is, worthless." But inside, the girl felt something shift. For every cruel word, the human gave her 10 words of courage. For every laugh, he gave her silence filled with respect. And for the first time in her life, she began to lift her head. One night, as they practiced near the broken machines, a stone flew through the air and landed at her feet. She froze, her heart leaping in her chest. From the shadows, figures appeared, their faces twisted with rage. "You think you are one of them now," a voice growled. "You think a human can make you strong," another hissed. The human stepped in front of her, his body a shield. "Leave," he warned, his voice low and sharp, but the group only laughed. Their eyes filled with venom. "She has chosen you," the leader sneered. "Then let her suffer with you." The girl trembled, fear wrapping around her like chains. But behind the fear was a flicker of something else, resolve. She stepped forward, her voice shaking but louder than it had ever been. "I am not worthless," she said. Her own words shocked her, the sound trembling in the night air. The crowd stilled for a moment, surprise flashing in their eyes. The leader spat on the ground, his face twisted in disgust. "You will regret those words," he snarled. Then he and his group disappeared into the shadows. But their promise of revenge lingered like smoke in the ruins. The human turned to her, his eyes steady. "You spoke for yourself," he said. A faint smile on his lips, she shook her head quickly, fear still pounding in her chest. "They will come back, stronger than before." He nodded, his voice calm. "Then we will be ready." His certainty was like fire, steady and unshaken. And for the first time, she felt that fire spark within her too. That night, as she lay in her shelter, she replayed the moment again and again. The fear, the anger, the sound of her own voice declaring she was not worthless. It terrified her, yet it also gave her strength. The chains that bound her spirit were not gone, but they were breaking, link by link. But in the shadows of the colony, her enemies gathered once more. Their hatred had turned into a plan, a cruel plan. If the human's loyalty gave her courage, they would test it, and in testing him, they would try to break her once and for all. The night was heavy with silence, but the storm was coming. The girl's soul was fragile but rising. The human's loyalty was strong but about to be tested, and the colony prepared its cruel hand, ready to strike without mercy. The night was colder than usual, a biting wind sweeping through the ruins. The girl sat near the old machines where she and the human trained. Her body ached from the day's lessons, but inside her chest was a small flame of pride. For once in her life, she no longer felt like a shadow, but unseen eyes were watching her from the darkness. Her enemies had grown tired of whispers and threats. They had chosen tonight to make their move, and they would use betrayal to strike the deepest wound. Earlier that day, a young alien girl had approached her. She was one of the few who had never mocked her openly. Her smile seemed kind, her words soft. "I want to help you," she whispered. The girl's heart, fragile and desperate for kindness, believed her. She followed when the young alien asked her to come later. "Meet me near the broken tower," she said. "I'll show you a place where no one will bother you again." The promise of peace was too tempting to resist, so when the night came, the girl slipped away. She did not tell the human, afraid he would forbid it. Her steps were quiet but filled with nervous hope. Maybe, just maybe, she had found another ally. But as she reached the broken tower, the truth revealed itself. Figures emerged from the shadows, their eyes sharp and cruel. The young alien who had lured her there stepped back, her smile turning into a sneer. "You are foolish," she spat. "Did you really think anyone would help you?" The girl froze, her chest tightening with dread. Around her stood 5 of her own kind, stronger and filled with hate. Her knees trembled as they closed in. "This is where your story ends," the leader hissed. Fear consumed her, but so did regret. She realized too late that she had walked straight into their trap. Her mind screamed for the human, but he was not here, and for the first time in days, she felt truly alone. The leader raised a hand ready to strike, but before the blow could land, a voice thundered across the ruins. "Enough!" it roared. The human stepped from the shadows, his eyes burning with fury. The crowd of attackers staggered back, surprised by his sudden presence. The girl gasped, tears rushing to her eyes. "You came," she whispered, her voice trembling with relief. He gave her a sharp nod, his gaze never leaving their enemies. "I told you," he said firmly. "You are not alone," the alien snarled, their leader stepping forward. "She betrayed her own kind," he spat. "And you defend her, human." The human's jaw tightened, his voice cold as steel. "I defend what is right," he said. "Cruelty makes you weak, not her," the leader growled, his rage boiling over. "Then you will both fall tonight," he declared. The fight began in an instant. One attacker lunged at the human, fists raised. But the human moved with swift precision, blocking and striking with brutal force. The sound of fists against flesh echoed in the night. The girl stumbled back, her heart racing. She wanted to hide, but she couldn't look away. The human fought with strength and skill, but he was outnumbered. Every strike he landed was met with another from the attackers. Her hands shook as she pressed against the wall. Fear screamed at her to stay still, but something else shouted louder, the memory of his words, the lessons he had taught her. "Stand again," he had said. "Never let them decide who you are." When one alien broke past the human and lunged for her, she reacted. Her body moved before her fear could stop it. She raised her arms the way he had taught her, blocking the blow clumsily. Then with trembling strength, she shoved back. The attacker stumbled. Surprised that she resisted at all, the girl's chest heaved, her eyes wide. For the first time, she had not simply endured, she had fought. The human saw her and shouted, "Good, don't stop." The fight raged on, brutal and desperate. The human's body took hits, blood on his lip, bruises on his skin, but his eyes never wavered. His resolve unbroken, the girl, though weak, pushed herself to stand beside him. Together they faced the attackers. Each blow from him was a shield, each small resistance from her a spark. The group began to falter, their confidence breaking. They had expected fear, not defiance. Finally, the leader staggered back, rage twisting his face. "This isn't over," he spat, retreating into the shadows. One by one, the others followed, their whispers promising vengeance, and just like that, the ruins fell silent again. The girl collapsed to her knees, her body trembling. Tears streamed down her face, not only from fear but from something greater. She had stood, she had resisted, even if only for a moment, and by her side, the human placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You did not break," he said softly. "You are stronger than you believe." Her tears fell harder at his words, but this time they carried hope. She looked at him through blurred eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Above them, the stars shimmered cold and distant, but inside her heart, a new light burned brighter than ever. She was still fragile, still afraid, but no longer worthless. And though the battle had ended, she knew the war for her soul had just begun. ***. The night after the fight was long and restless. The girl lay awake in her shelter, every bruise on her body reminding her of the battle. But more than the pain, she remembered the moment she stood against her attacker for the first time in her life. She had not been silent. She had not been helpless. Her thoughts circled around the human, his blood, his strength, his unwavering loyalty. He had risked everything for her, even when it meant facing an entire group alone. Her chest tightened at the memory of him standing before her like a shield. No one had ever done that for her before. When dawn broke, the colony was buzzing with whispers. Some mocked, saying the human would soon abandon her. Others sneered that she was still weak, still worthless. But there were also voices of doubt. Now voices uncertain. Because those who had watched the fight had seen something different. They had seen the girl stand, even if only for a moment. They had seen her resist when before she would have cowered. And that small act planted unease in their cruel certainty. Later, that morning, the human returned, his body marked with bruises but his spirit strong. He found her sitting on the broken wall, her eyes heavy with questions. "You're hurt," she whispered, guilt trembling in her voice. He shook his head, brushing it off with calm strength. "I've been hurt before," he said, "but what matters is that you fought back." His words hit her harder than any insult she had ever endured. Her lips trembled, tears gathering in her eyes. "I was so afraid," she admitted. "But I didn't want to let you down." The human's gaze softened, his voice steady. "You didn't do it for me. You did it for yourself," he told her. "You showed them, and you showed yourself that you are not nothing." Her tears spilled then, but they were tears of release, not only of pain. The days that followed were not easy. Her enemies still glared, still whispered, still plotted. But something had changed within her. The words worthless no longer struck as deep, because she had begun to see her own worth. With each lesson, she grew stronger, her steps more confident, her voice steadier. When she fell, she rose again, and when fear whispered, she remembered the night she fought beside him. The human stayed by her side, not as her savior, but as her ally. He did not carry her burden for her. He simply reminded her she could carry it herself. Together they trained, walked, and faced the scorn of the colony, and with each passing day, she found herself standing taller. One evening, the leader of her enemies returned. His eyes burned with fury, his words sharp as knives. "You still cling to him," he snarled. "You think this human makes you strong." The girl felt fear rise, but then she stepped forward. Her voice was not loud, but it was steady. "I am strong because I choose to be," she said. "Your hatred does not decide who I am anymore." The words rang through the ruins, clear and sharp. The leader sneered, but this time, the crowd that had gathered did not laugh. Some looked uncertain, others even quiet. They had seen her weakness before. But now they saw something else. They saw a girl who refused to bow. The human stood beside her, silent but proud. He did not need to speak, because her voice carried enough strength for both of them. The leader spat on the ground and turned away, his threats empty, and for the first time, the girl felt victory. That night, under the cold stars, she sat with the human, her chest lighter than it had ever been. "I was nothing before you came," she whispered. He shook his head firmly, his eyes never leaving hers. "You were never nothing," he said. "They made you believe a lie, but I only reminded you of the truth." Her heart swelled, tears shining in her eyes. For the first time, her tears were not born from shame but from joy. She looked at her hands, once weak, now steady. She looked at the ruins, once a prison, now only a place she could leave behind. And she looked at him, the one who had seen worth in her when no one else did. Her voice broke softly as she whispered, "You made me feel alive again." The human smiled faintly, shaking his head. "No. You found your life yourself," he said. "I only stood by you while you remembered it." His words were the final gift she needed. As the wind carried the last whispers of the day, the girl stood tall. She was no longer only the mocked one, no longer only the shadow. She was alive, strong, and reborn. And though the road ahead would still be hard, she was no longer afraid to walk it. The colony that once called her worthless would never erase the fire in her heart again, because she knew now, without doubt, that her life had value. And as long as the human walked beside her, she would never forget it. She was no longer nothing, she was everything she was meant to be. ****.